now we get to move into the really sweet topic of safety. So I wanted to start with unsafety so that we could end kind of on an encouraging note of safety. But, as we've talked about unsafety, if you've had kind of people that have come into your mind, or you've kind of started thinking about this concept of safety in a new way, just take note of that. And after this class, I would love for you to spend some time reflecting on that and maybe what I said that kind of sparked something in you. And we can all benefit from paying attention. But let's move on to safe people. So circling back to kind of that first bullet point of unsafety, conversely, safe people communicate effectively. So remember how we talked about passive aggressive and passive aggressive communication? So those are kind of three styles of unhealthy communication. Healthy communication is practicing assertiveness. And assertiveness is really, in a nutshell, it's I feel and I need. Assertiveness is a skill. It's really helpful to examine kind of our tendency when we are in unhealth of the way that we maybe start communicating. And there's no shame. It's more just being aware of, do I tend to fall in passive communication, or perhaps some passive aggressive communication or aggressive communication? Oftentimes, this way of communicating that happens when we are in unhealth is something that perhaps we learned in our family of origin. Maybe we were never taught to communicate assertively. There's lots of different reasons that we can engage in this maybe unhealthy or poor communication, but safe people and healthy people and people that are actively pursuing health, they repair when they have communicated poorly. And they acknowledge, hey, I kind of said that in a mean way, or that came out pretty critical. I apologize. Can I recalibrate for a second and share my thoughts with you again? So that's really that posture of humility. And even if we don't get it right, in air quotations, all the time, there is the ability to circle back around, or to repair, or an openness to hearing feedback around how our communication may have impacted someone else. So that idea of repair, that's an undercurrent throughout this piece on safe people. Safe people are open to repairing, whether that's they communicated unhealthfully or they crossed a boundary. They are open to feedback, open to repairing in the relationship because they value connection over being right. So that's one trap that we can fall into as humans. Sometimes we want to be right at any and all costs. And safe people really value connection with other people and the relationship over making sure that the other person agrees or fully understands their perspective. So assertiveness skills, that's a wonderful topic. This is not a training on assertiveness itself, but I would really encourage you to look into this if this sparked your interest today. We can all benefit from assertive communication. And assertiveness, really, it allows for me to know where other people stand. I don't have to engage in mind reading. I know what other people are feeling and what they need, both from themselves and from me. I'm not playing any guessing games. I'm not mind reading. And if I'm on the receiving end of assertive communication, I'm not being belittled. I'm really fostering kind of this relational give and take, and I'm not on the receiving end of perhaps aggressive communication where I'm belittled or made fun of or what have you. So assertive communication really allows both parties to be heard in an effective way and can honestly lead to wonderful conflict resolution as well if there is conflict. And again, safe people, if they don't communicate well, they repair, and they repair quickly. They don't wait a year to repair. They repair within a reasonable amount of time, whatever that, amount of time feels to them. So this kind of is a wonderful segue into this next piece, but safe people address issues as they arise in the relationship versus avoiding. So this is that concept of like, hey, if you hurt me or if I hurt you, I'm able to address it, and we decide whether we want to move on in the relationship or perhaps we decide to take some space, but it is addressed versus avoiding the conversation altogether. And again, that mitigates the mind reading. It can lessen our anxiety, all those things that are just wonderful kind of fruits of really being, in it with someone. People that are safe have the ability to introspect and practice curiosity. So we talked about this in our kind of first segment on unsafety, but safe people have the ability to introspect, practice curiosity, like, I wonder if I could do that better moving forward, or I wonder what there is to learn from this situation in relationship with that person, or I'm wondering how other people are experiencing me. Those are all examples of practicing curiosity and practicing introspection. Safe people are attuned to their own emotional experiences and thus have the capacity to be with others in their emotion. So notice that I said be with others. So they don't validate, they don't dismiss, they don't minimize, they don't deflect. They have quite a bit of emotional capacity and thus can sit with other people well. Safe people are attuned to other people's values, so they are kind and respectful. They do not make the assumption that other people should or shouldn't have the same values as them. There maybe is a mutual respect, or hopefully there is a mutual respect for other people's values and stories and backgrounds and beliefs versus making assumptions or stereotypes or demands to another person. So there's a mutual respect there. Safe people also ask lots of questions to learn more and to understand more of someone else's perspective versus assuming or making demands. So we talked about this with that unsafety. It never feels good, and I don't use that word never, but frequently, but it never feels good to be on the receiving end of a demand. Safe people are really curious. They seek to understand someone else in relationship versus making assumptions. Safe people are actively asking themselves how they can learn, grow, and are open to leaning into difficult experiences. So they understand that life is hard, it can be messy, and they are open to leaning in, not only for other people, but for themselves. So they're actively working on healing their pain and looking at perhaps how their stories or trauma has impacted them, what there is to learn, what they need to maybe work on, areas of growth. And safe people are respectful of boundaries. So they have flexible boundaries. There is kind of that white picket fence of, this is my yard and that's your yard, but I can still wave to you as a neighbor. I'm still able to connect with you. My boundaries are not rigid or inflexible. They're open and they're flexible, and safe people honor other people's boundaries. So they're not pushy. They don't engage in passive aggressive communication around someone else's boundary system. And so that's really important just to take note of. Safe people have flexibility in their boundaries. Safe people apologize when they mess up. That humbling or that posture of humility that it takes to apologize and to repair can be hard for a lot of us, but they acknowledge and they take ownership over mistakes in relationships. And those are kind of all of the pieces in my mind that make up a safe person. And I'm sure that you could add even more to that. But yeah, there's this piece around healthy boundary systems, healthy communication, doing our own work, so to speak, so that we can not only tolerate our own emotions, but emotions in other people as well. There's a piece around continuous practice of introspection and curiosity. There's an approaching of hard things versus an avoidance. And there's really this idea of a give and take that is healthy and reciprocal, I think, in relationships. And there's also this thread of honesty in safe people. So they're honest rather than dishonest, and ability to apologize when they don't get it right. And so safe people are not perfect. They are not, the people that think that they have it all together, but rather they are actively working on their pain and working on their stuff, so to speak, because we all have stuff. And they're acknowledging how it might show up in relationships with other people. So they have that awareness. And remember, we all mess up. That doesn't necessarily make us unsafe. The difference between an unsafe and a safe person is the ability to apologize, the ability to make right a situation when we have wronged. And remember, we look for patterns of behavior as therapists, really, and really just even as a person. I'm looking for a pattern of behavior. So if someone crosses my boundary one time, that doesn't feel great, but if it happens 10 times, that's really different than one time. So we're looking at a pattern of behavior in deciding if someone is unsafe or safe for us. And some of that happens over time. We can't necessarily always really determine if someone is safe by spending an hour with them or one day with them. We really, as humans, we're complex, and so it does take time to really recognize that in other people and to be able to kind of discern and have wisdom around other people's level of safety. So remember that the point of this masterclass is not to shame, it's not to guilt you if you've maybe perhaps behaved in a way that was unsafe. It's more about looking at the pattern of behavior, and that can be a really good sign to really support you in recognizing people in your life that perhaps may not be the safest individuals for you.